like I said, as I started to work through this design process, the first thing I realized is, wow, in order to get this grow wall established and in order to keep it looking good, I was going to need, I'm going to go to the next slide now, to the grow room. I was going to need a place to start propagating right away, because what I realized, as soon as I got that wall built, I wanted to be able to have plants in it looking good. And at the time, I didn't have a greenhouse down the street, and I didn't have access. So I said, how about a grow room in the basement? I went down with the owner, and I said, how much space can I have here? And he says, well, you can have this much space. And he stepped it off, and it was a 8 feet by 10 foot space in the basement that had about 6 foot 4 inches headroom. So I said, okay, well, let's work with that. And so I proceeded to install. I'm going to go to the next slide here. Right, this 80 square feet. I installed a 150 gallon glass aquarium on a stand, and 25 tilapia fingerlings. I had room on 2 walls combined for 12 5-foot zip grow towers for Bright Agrotech. And in order to light those walls, I had a 4-light T5 high output fixture that I hung vertically on a light mover. And I also had a seed propagation tower and microgreens rack with lights that I fit on one wall. And then I also installed some young fellows I met here in Brooklyn had just built this pretty cool vertically oriented hydroponic system. They call it a VOHS, and it had enough for 500 plant sites and an LED light mounted horizontally, and it rotated around on a carousel. I'm going to go back to the picture here. If you look at the picture, you can see it in both of these. On the left, it's behind the aquarium. You can kind of see the frame. And I set this in to tie it in with the aquarium. And if you look at the aquarium, you can see the sump that I built custom to fit into the below the tank and on the stand, so it would take the overflow from the fish tank. And if you look at the picture on the right, you can see the getting prepared to start planting some seedlings, and the little seedling. It's sold online as kind of for growing microgreens, and it fit in here. It was on wheels, so I could literally easily pull it out of the grow room if I needed more room to get in there. I had some overhead lighting. I also put in a fan, an intake, fresh air and exhaust. Just simple, actually natural flow. I put an intake vent down low on one end of the wall and another vent up higher on the other end, and hung an oscillating fan from the roof to get air moving and keep things going. So moving through here, here's a couple more pictures of the grow room. On the left, we're starting to plant the VOHS system. And if you look at the picture on the right, you can see what that looks like lit up with the LEDs. And this was all tied into the same fish tank down here. And at one point, I counted up with the seedlings and all the plants. We had about 1,700 plants in this grow room. The next slide is a fun picture because you can start to see things growing now in the grow room. We've got the fish tank. If you look close, you can see the fish in there. And it was always difficult to get photos of the towers on the wall because it was so tight in there. So what's fun about this is you can see a lot of what's happening with the fish tank. You can see the reflection of the towers on the wall, and as the light mover moves back and forth, it gives lights to the plants. And of course, in the back, you can see the VOH system growing and loaded up. And again, these are all. I have a pump that's everything drains down into the reservoir at the bottom of the VOHS, and it gets split back. The pump splits and goes back to, well, I have 2 pumps in this system. That's right. One pumps back to the fish tank, and one pumps up to the towers and drains down. If you look down on the lower left-hand corner of this photo, you can see my my little gutter system where all the towers drain into and feed back into the reservoir at the bottom of the VHF. Questions?
I don't have any right now.
Okay, well let's see. So now that I got the grow room up and running and things are growing, it's time to bounce back up to the atrium room. So I'm clicking the next slide on this, and it's back to the atrium room, and I'm looking at the wall, and we were having a discussion about this, and again, it was time for a consultation. If you look at the picture on the right, well, you can see a different perspective in both these. There's a bunch of rocks and stones with bromeliads. They had this sort of planter thing going there. And the discussion was, do we work with the rocks, or do we, get rid of them and start from scratch? And we opted to go ahead and demo the rocks and pull them out of there. And the next picture I'm going to show you was where the rocks have been removed. We're starting to, I'm going to build in the far left-hand corner is the sump, actually, where everything drains down to, and then the pump lives in that eventually. And then on the right, you see we're constructing a bench that moves along using the same white bead horizontal siding. And you can also see we've added some extra electrical outlets in here to support future, mechanical air pumps. We decided to go with, after several discussions about, fish tanks, we decided to go with 3 smaller tanks on the wall. So here we're on the right, we're configuring the initial setting up of the towers and placing them, and they all drain into a hidden gutter that is behind at the very bottom of the towers. Is just tucked in between the ledge and the wall, and it drains down and all the way down to the left and then pumps back up. I installed a PVC irrigation manifold with holes drilled to match the tops of the towers. And next slide shows a couple more photos as we're building the pedestals to set the aquariums on. And I think we had some people coming, so to kind of check things out. The slide on the right shows I've got the acrylic aquariums actually sitting there on the pedestals, and towers in place with plants growing, so people are starting to get an idea of what's happening. I think they actually had an event, and I was trying to spruce things up a little bit. And then the next slide shows you what it looks like when it's growing. This isn't the best shot of the aquariums, but we opted to go with goldfish and koi fish, and there's a couple of algae eating placos in these aquariums. And again, what we're doing here is we're cycling towers out of the grow room back up to the upper room. They're sort of getting plugged into the highly nutrient-rich system in the basement, and then brought up here and tied in with this separate recirculating system with the other smaller fish. And that really worked well. Once we got things established and running, it was working well.